Hey guys, what's up? It's Alec Torelli, and welcome to a special episode of the Hand of the Day. Normally our show is Tuesdays at noon, but I wanted to do an intermittent episode because there was an awesome hand played very recently at the 2018 World Series of Poker main event between Phil Ivey and Brian Altman. And this is how Phil Ivey busted the 2018 main event. I'd like to talk about this hand. I got a lot of questions about it from readers and clients asking me to go through the strategy, and I thought I'd make a quick video for you. So definitely check this out. Awesome stuff coming. If you want to submit your hands to me, check out the link below at consciouspoker.com/HOTD. You can send me your hands and I'll pick the best ones and review them here in future videos. Awesome content coming up on the channel. There's some more cool content coming, so be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Every Tuesday at noon, you're going to get a brand new episode of the Hand of the Day all summer long. So without further ado, let's jump into today's episode of the Hand of the Day.
Hand of the Day.
Today's hand kicks off with very deep stacks. 5K, 10K blinds. I believe we're in day 4 of the World Series of Poker main event. We're already in the money, and Phil Ivey, of course, the legend that he is one of the big stacks in the event with 76 big blinds. Now, keep in mind, not that it's that relevant, but the average stack is probably something around 500K at this point. So Phil Ivey's very deep, very big stack, and Altman even deeper, probably one of the chip leaders with 1.35 million. Ivey kicks this hand off opening in second position to 22K or 2.2x with pocket nines. This is a very standard open. Not much to say about this other than we don't know what Ivey's range is in this spot because we just don't know the table dynamics. Maybe Ivey was opening a lot of hands taking advantage of being the legend Phil Ivey and his chip advantage over the table, or maybe he was playing super tight because Altman was to his left. This is one of the difficult parts about analyzing a hand like this. There's just so much of the dynamics that we don't know. So we're analyzing this hand in a vacuum, or in other words, without any other information, just assuming there's no history that could influence how the players are going to actually play. Standard 2.2x for open from Ivey, and now Altman in fourth position with Queen Jack offsuit. Probably a standard fold, but could opt to 3-bet here. One of the good cases for 3-betting, especially in tournaments, is when your stack dominates that of your opponent. It's a good situation to apply leverage. You're in position and you really threaten your opponent by 3-betting because you can bust him, but he can't bust you. Now against an aggressive, good opponent or great opponent like Ivey, maybe that he's not going to be as intimidated, but he still has to abide by tournament strategy and the fact that preserving your stack is more important than accumulating chips, making this a tough spot for Ivey's range in general. So I'm okay with the idea of 3-betting here. I'd like to see Altman have a little bit better of a hand depending on how loose Ivey was opening. Maybe something like King Queen off plays a little bit better. Queen Jack a little bit on the looser side, but I could still get behind a 3-bet here with this hand. I believe if he had something a little stronger, like Queen Jack suited, you'd probably just see here a call from Altman, but again, I don't know his game that well, and I don't know the dynamics of the hand. I'm okay with 3-betting. I love the sizing here. It's definitely a size that's on the bigger side, and it immediately puts Ivey on the defense, which, as the chip leader of Altman, you should definitely be doing and applying pressure. Maybe could choose a wiser opponent, but still a good, aggressive spot to take advantage of. Power to Altman for being aggressive as the chip leader. He 3-bets to 75K, folds around to Ivey, who I believe has a very clear call with pocket nines. Too strong to fold, too weak to 4-bet. He calls, and we go heads up to the flop. The flop comes down Queen Jack Deuce with 2 spades. A great flop for Altman, flopping top 2 pair with a backdoor flush draw. Incredible flop for Queen Jack. Ivey checks, which he's going to do with his entire range. Very, very standard. And now Altman decides to bet 1/3 of the pot, or 60,000. Now I like this bet here from Altman because it keeps his range wider. When he bets small here, he could have a lot more bluffs in his range, giving Ivey a good price to call and putting him in a pretty tough spot with a hand like nines. Altman here is going to be betting quite a wide range of hands using this sizing. He could definitely be betting something like ace-king, ace-10, king-10, 10-9, maybe even something as weak as ace-5, ace-4, ace-3 of clubs. There are definitely some bluffs here that are in his range. Now you may say, well, Alec, why doesn't Ivey just fold? There's 2 overs and these cards connected so much with Altman's range. And you may be right. This might be a spot where Ivey could just pitch his cards on the flop. But against a range that has a decent amount of bluffs in it, Ivey's going to have roughly 35% equity here. I ran some numbers behind the scenes, and if Altman is 3-betting pretty wide, which it seems like he is, and c-betting this flop often, which it seems like he's probably going to be doing as well given this sizing, Ivey's going to have about 35% equity versus his range. Now, Ivey's getting a great price here. The pot's $240,000, he's calling 60. He's getting 4-1. He only needs 20% equity to justify calling. In short, the price that he's getting is better. In short, he has enough equity to justify calling here given his incredible pot odds. If Altman bet something like 125 here on the flop, I think you're definitely going to see a fold from Ivey here, especially given his stacks. Now, how Ivey, I believe, should be playing this spot is very much depending on what he thinks Altman's going to do on the turn and the river. If Altman's likely to barrel any turn or river, Ivey should just pitch this flop and fold, knowing that even if he has the best hand, he's not going to win this pot and he could find better spots for those very precious chips. Ivey probably thought that his check call on the flop represents a lot of strength, making it seem like he has a queen or 2-pair or a set or something really strong, and then Altman would shut down with air on subsequent streets. When you combine that with being the GOAT and having a decent amount of equity, some backdoor straight draws, backdoor flush draws, hitting still a possibility to hit your set, I can get behind a check call here on the flop, especially given the incredible price that Ivey's getting. Ivey check calls the flop, and we go heads up to the turn. The turn comes in 8 of spades, which is a great card for Ivey. This gives him a lot more equity picking up the backdoor straight draw and the backdoor flush draw. And it's also a good card because his opponent is likely to shut down even if he has some strong hands. Something like aces or kings or ace-queen on this turn, if you're Altman, is just a little bit too loose to bet. If you're betting here 3 times and getting called, you're probably going to be beat, and so Altman is going to be forced to check this turn. Now, one creative line that's a little bit more high variance that Ivey could take here is to consider leading the turn, representing a straight, a set, 2-pair, or a flush, all of which would bet the turn. Because this turn pretty much has equal value for both Ivey's range and Altman's range, I could probably think checking the turn is a better long-term play. It's hard to construct balance ranges for leading here on the turn, and when you start to lead with all of your strong hands on the turn, then what happens when you check? You probably have nothing. I think checking from Ivey's spot is a better, lower variance line, and it keeps his range wider, making him more difficult to play against. I could get behind Ivey's check here, and now it's over to Altman. Now, Altman has a tough decision. Most of the time in this spot, he's going to have some bluffs, like ace-king, ace-10, or ace-5 of clubs. Maybe he's going to have 1 spade in his hand. Or he's going to have some 1-pair type hands, like a queen or an overpair, and most of those hands are going to want to check. He's not going to want to be betting this turn with 1 pair or a bluff, because he doesn't want to get blown off his hand or risk getting called by better hands in multiple streets. So Altman's going to be checking this turn a lot of the time with some weak showdown value types of hands, or just be giving up when he has nothing. Because of that, I kind of like Altman's decision to check the turn here with a stronger hand like Queen Jack, which is one of the best hands that he can have, given the fact that he checked. It makes him a lot more deceptive, a lot more tricky, and against a really good hand reader like Ivey, who it's going to be hard to get 3 streets of value, I kind of like this check here, which can either pick off bluffs on the river, value shove if you improve, or just value bet when your opponent checks. Altman checks, and we go to the river, where things go down. The river comes a 3 of diamonds, Ivey checks again, which I think is very clear and standard here. There's no reason to turn your hand into a bluff. You're probably not going to get a queen or an overpair to fold for one bet unless he does something crazy like go all in. But he has so much showdown value here that when it goes check, check, he wins often enough that I think checking is the best play. If he had something worse like King 10 or Ace King somehow, maybe he could bluff with those hands, but I think nines is just too strong to bluff with. Now over to Altman, who I think has a very clear bet. He's near the top of his range, and Ivey showed weakness on multiple streets, checking, and I think Altman could definitely get value from worse hands. While he might want to check back this river with something like King Queen because it's a little bit dicey of a board, Queen Jack is just too strong. He could definitely get value from worse queens, or maybe if somehow Ivey has a worse two pair. He also blocks a flush, which is nice, so that makes it a little bit less likely that Ivey has it beat. Altman now bets basically 200k into 300k, and even though it's folded, okay, it's back on Ivey, and even though Ivey could conceivably pick off some bluffs here, I think it's a little bit too risky to call in this spot. Altman should be bluffing, infrequently and betting, value betting with a decent amount of his hands that check back the turn. So I think there's too many hands here that Ivey loses to pick off this bluff. I also think that from a game theory standpoint, Ivey has some better hands to choose from to call this river. He's going to have some queens. He could call with some two pairs. He's going to have some better queens that he can choose to call this river with. But I think this hand plays very well as a bluff. Ivey has one of the worst hands he can have, and he also blocks straights and flushes. If you look at this situation, when Ivey decides to check raise all in, which is what he does, his range actually becomes suddenly stronger than Altman's. It's conceivable that Ivey can have a flush here or a straight because he would play a straight this way or a flush this way on all the previous streets, checking the flop, checking the turn, then maybe going for a creative check raise on the river, hoping to get value or hoping his opponent bluffs. Altman, on the other hand, really can't have much better than one pair. Some of the time, sure, he's going to have two pair here, but it's really hard for him to have two pair given the previous action of preflop and the turn. Sets we could pretty much rule out because he would probably have bet the turn, and the same goes for straights and flushes. Maybe with the exception of the nut flush that's going to be trapping this turn, Altman's range is pretty much what we call capped, meaning the best hand he can have is something like, a strong one pair, maybe a two pair like what he has, but he's pretty much never going to have a better hand than that. When you combine the hand reading that we just went through in this hand, plus the fact that Ivey has blockers, making it that much more unlikely that Altman has a flush or a straight. And when you look at the fact that this is really one of the worst hands that Ivey ever gets to the river with, I think this is a great spot to turn your hand into a bluff. Ivey could definitely represent a flush or a straight credibly, and he's going to put Altman to a very tough decision. Maybe the one case I don't like for bluffing in this particular spot is the fact that we are in the main event of the World Series of Poker, and Ivey can fold here and still have 60 big blinds, which is above average stack. He's going to be one of the best players left in the field, and he could find a lot of easy spots to just chip up without risking his entire stack on a prayer. Even if this is a profitable shove, it's a lot of variance, and an event like the main, where the structure is so good and he has such a big edge, he could opt to wait for a better spot. But again, that's why he's Phil Ivey, because he's willing to make aggressive plays when he knows that it's profitable in the long run. So credit to Phil Ivey for going for it in this spot. I think it takes a lot of balls to make hard plays that you should make, but some people don't have the balls to make deep in the main. That's what makes Ivey the GOAT. So credit to him for check raising all in here. Back over to Altman, who I think has to call this spot. I'm not just saying that being results oriented because I see that Ivey has two nines. If you think about this hand, Altman has really one of the best hands that he can ever have. When we looked through this spot, so much of the time he's going to be folding here. And if Altman folds 100% of the time, what's Ivey going to do? Ivey's going to exploit the fuck out of him. So it's important that Altman can call this river some of the time. And with Queen Jack, with a Queen of Spades blocker, which blocks a lot of the flushes that Ivey can have, Ace Queen, King Queen, Queen 10, maybe Queen 9, This is definitely a call here. You block some sets, which maybe Ivey got creative with. You block flushes, and you're at the top of your range. You're against an opponent who's definitely capable, like Ivey. You also have the chips to afford the call. If you lose the hand, you still have 60 or 70 big blinds, an average stack that you can navigate with in this tournament. If you win the hand, you're one of the chip leaders, so you're getting a good price on your call given the nature of the tournament. I think Altman has to call here, which he did tank for a long time and finally do. This is definitely one of the most interesting hands that I witnessed in the 2018 World Series of Poker main event, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this one. What would you have done? How would you play this hand? Was Ivey getting out of line here, or did he make a great play and just get unlucky that Altman had such a strong hand and made an amazing call? Credit to both players here. I really believe this is poker at the highest levels. They both played the hand amazing on all streets. I really love this hand, and I think we could all learn a ton from it. I hope you like this video. Subscribe to my channel for more awesome hand of the day content coming your way if you want to take your poker game to that next level. Thank you guys for watching. You guys are all awesome. Have an amazing summer. Much love, everyone. Thank you for your support during the main, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.